Welcome to Coach Agnews Math. Today we'll be talking about squares. So as we talk about squares, the first thing to talk about is the fact that a square is a special parallelogram, rectangle, and rhombus. What that means is that the rules and properties for all of these shapes apply to the square. So if you notice, properties of a square, the first 5 properties are the 5 properties of a parallelogram. This next set of properties, these next 2, would be my rectangle properties, and then my last 3 would be the properties special for a rhombus. For a square, all 10 of these properties are true, which allows us to jump right in and start talking about how to apply it. Let's look at number 6. If ABCD is a square and AD equals 11, find each missing value. So, right now I know that ABCD is a square. So if AD is 11, that tells me I can label all 4 sides as 11. Okay, I'm able to do this knowing that all 4 sides are congruent. Looking inside, I've got a right triangle, an isosceles right triangle, in fact, where I can talk about a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to say 11 squared plus 11 squared equals dB squared, where dB is my diagonal. So that would be 121 plus 121, which would be 242 equals dB squared. Take the square root of both sides. The square root of 242 would equal dB. Now, take square root of 242. If you want to grab your calculator, you're welcome to. Say second x squared. Type in 242. We find that it is an irrational number. So what we're going to do is we're just going to leave it as the square root of 242. Okay, going to leave it as the square root of 242. So that would be dB. That could also be said as AC. So let's look over at what we already know. BC is 11. AC is the square root of 242. dB is the square root of 242. EC would be half of the square root of 242. Now, notice I can't just say divide 242 by 2 because this is outside and this is inside of a radical sign. So be careful about that. But that is how I will go ahead and leave that answer. Knowing that BD is the 15.56, so on, right? I could look at half of that. EC would be half, so it would be about 7 3/4, 7.75, somewhere in there. If I divide by 2, I could easily find that decimal number, but right now it's easier to leave it in radical form so we're not dealing with irrational numbers and not having to round. Let's go ahead and look on at angles. Looking at our angles, first thing we can do is we know that we have 90-degree angles in every corner because we have 4 right angles, just like a rectangle. The other thing that we know is our diagonals bisect opposite angles. That is a rhombus property. So when it says bisects, 90 bisected would be 45 for each angle. So I can go ahead and write the 45s in there. The other piece that we know is that our diagonals are perpendicular, which means each interior angle, each piece in the middle where our diagonals are meeting, is a 90-degree angle. So we have 4 isosceles right triangles where I have 45, 45, 90 for my angles. That's part of the reason that squares are special, is because of that property. It allows us to use multiple sets of rules. So let's look at it. Measure of angle DAB. DAB would be 90 degrees. Looking at the measure of angle AEB, AEB would be 90 degrees. The measure of angle CBD, CBD would be 45 degrees. Of course, the one place I forgot to write it. And then the measure of angle BAC, BAC would also be 45 degrees. This time, I suggest you pause the video and give number 7 a try. Welcome back. Hopefully we looked at it, said that PQRS is a square, TR is 17, so I know that each piece inside must be 17. Okay, I'm going to turn around and use my rules, knowing that I've got a perpendicular diagonals. I'm going to say 17 squared plus 17 squared will give me my side. So 17 squared plus 17 squared equals, we'll say QR squared. Type that in the calculator. 17 squared plus 17 squared gives me 578. Take the square root of 578, I get an irrational number. So I get my irrational number, so instead of that, I'm just going to say the square root of 578 equals QR. So all four sides of my shape will be the square root of 578. Notice it's easier because we're not having to apply this. We're just going to leave it as this number. If we were having to actually apply this to a situation, it might be easier at that point to go ahead and round our number so we have a more exact value to work with in terms of knowing what number it is. It'd be easier for us to talk about approximately 24 feet as opposed to approximately the square root of 578 feet. In this case, not worried about that, so we're going to go ahead and keep leaving it as leaving the radical sign in our answer. Let's go ahead and look at our sides, see if we've got them all. PR, be that whole distance, we would say 34. QS would be the other diagonal, again 34. QT would be 17. PQ would be the square root of 578. Looking at the measures of my angles. The best part about the measures of the angles is it's just like the previous problem. We know that all four angles are right angles. We know that the diagonals are perpendicular, and we know that the diagonals are also bisectors, which makes each angle 45 degrees around the exterior of my shape. So, as I'm looking at that, PRS would be 45 degrees. STR would be 90 degrees. The measure of angle PSR would also be 90 degrees. And the measure of angle QPR would be 45 degrees. This time I challenge you to pause the video, as looking at the bottom pieces, there's going to be a mixture of rhombi and squares. Give them a shot, see if you can do this on your own. Welcome back. Looking at it, MNOP is a rhombus. Find the measure of MP. So, MP would be congruent to all the other sides because we know that rhombi have congruent sides. Again, look back at your properties. You will have those every time you're working on these. Take advantage of what you know. So that means these two pieces would be congruent. So I'd say 9x minus 77 equals 3x plus 7. Go ahead and add 77 to both sides. Subtract 3x from both sides. And I'd say that 6x would equal 84. So divide by 6. X would equal 12. So, not finished here. I'm going to take that 12. I'm going to plug it back in. 3 times 12 plus 7 would be 36 plus 7, which is 43. So the measure of MP would be 43. Number 9. Go ahead and make it a little bigger for us. If CDEF is a rhombus, find the measure of angle FED. So they want to know the measure of angle FED. We got to find this angle, but we're given a different angle. So let's start by solving for x. Once we have x, we can go back and plug it in. We know that it's a rhombus, so we know that diagonals bisect the angle, which makes those two pieces congruent. So 5x plus 1 equals 8x minus 20 Go ahead and say minus 5x to both sides. Going to go ahead and add 20 to both sides. And we'd say that 21 equals 3x, or x is 7. Take that back, plug it in. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 1 is 36. So I have 36 for each part of that angle. Okay. So for the sake of what we're doing, I'm going to say 36 and 36 added together tells me that whole angle is 72. Opposite angles are congruent, so I'm going to go ahead and say 72 degrees up here just to help us see it. Opposite angles are congruent. Now consecutive angles would be supplementary. So finding the angle that they've asked for, FED, we're going to take 180 minus 72, and I'm going to be left with 108 degrees for the measure of angle FED. All right, looking on number 10. If STUV is a square with SW being 2x plus 13, SW, excuse me, not XS, and WU being 8x minus 41, find VT. Well, square, we know that diagonals bisect each other. Those two pieces have to be congruent, so 2x plus 13 equals 8x minus 41. Do a little bit of algebra, subtract 2x, add 41. Let's say 54 equals 6x, or x would be 6. Excuse me, not 6. X would be 9 after I divide by 6. So go ahead and plug that back in. 2 times 9 plus 13 is 18 plus 13, which gives me 31. So each piece of my diagonal is 31. That means my total diagonal will be 62, and since diagonals are congruent, VT would also equal 62. Looking on to number 11. If FGHI is a square, solve for x. Again, special properties of a square. We know that all four sides all four angles are right angles, and we know that all four angles are bisected by the diagonal, which makes each piece 45 degrees. So I could say 7x plus 3 equals 45 degrees. Subtract 3 from both sides. I'm going to say that 7x is 42, or x is 6. In this case, that's all they asked for. We don't have to plug it back in. Got our information that we need. Thank you for watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day.